Could Canada be made the 51st state of the United States of America? This question persists in being popular with people talking about it after Donald Trump's latest troll talking about making Canada the 51st state. So I figured it would be interesting to take a look at the law and consider, is this actually possible? Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So as I said in the preamble, since being elected, Donald Trump, who takes office next week, has talked about buying Greenland and making Canada the 51st state. But can this really happen? I thought that it was just another one of his offhand comments, a troll to get attention, and it certainly did get attention. The amount of sudden patriotism from people who formerly said that Canada has no culture, and the anger over this suggestion, I've found a little bit perplexing and interesting. But it's also the way that this seems to persist and continue. I thought it would go away, but it doesn't seem to be going away. So since it's still somewhat of a hot topic, I thought it would make sense to have a look at the laws, at Canada's Constitution, to see, could this actually happen? So we'll look at the Constitution. We'll also look at the Supreme Court's consideration of whether Quebec could unilaterally leave the Confederation. So, for example, if there were a province that wanted to join the United States, would they be allowed to leave? And then we'll just look at some other options that don't involve our Constitution, and I'll give my thoughts as we go on the likelihood of each of these. So the first thing to take a look at is the Constitution Act, and I've got it open here to Section 41, which would be the governing section for removing members of Canada or provinces of Canada, changing the entire constitution of the country so that the provinces don't exist anymore and that we become part of the United States of America. So this is the key here. Section 41 requires that an amendment to the Constitution of Canada in relation to these following matters can be made by a proclamation issued by the Governor General under the Great Seal of Canada only where authorized by resolutions of the Senate and the House of Commons and the Legislative Assembly of each province. So you would need unanimous agreement of all 10 provinces, as well as the Senate and the House of Commons. So I think this is what makes it practically impossible, because it only would take one provincial legislature to prevent it from happening. And I think that could pretty easily happen. And some might say, well, is this the right section? Because there is Section 38, but I think it is Section 41, because that's the one talking about the right of provinces to numbers of members in the House of Commons. Also, the office of the Queen, Governor General, I mean, that would have to be changed. The Queen would no longer be the head of state. We'd no longer have Governor Generals or lieutenant governors of provinces. So I think this is the right section. Now, for those who would say, well, Canada doesn't even exist as a country, it's a corporation, or the Constitution never came into effect, I covered this in detail in episode 108. So I recommend that you have a look at that episode, and I think you'll be satisfied from the proofs that I show there that Canada is a country. The Constitution Acts of 1867 and 1982 are in full force and effect. So this section would govern whether Canada could become a member of the United States. Now, another thing that we could consider is, could a province just unilaterally leave and join the United States? So this is a reference that the Supreme Court considered. It's indexed as reference re Secession of Quebec. And this covered the question of whether Quebec could unilaterally leave the country. So I'm just looking at the summary here. We'll leave the link in the show description if you want to read the whole case, but I think this sums it up right here. That says there is no right under the Constitution or in international law to unilateral secession. The possibility of an unconstitutional declaration of secession leading to a de facto secession is not ruled out. The ultimate success of such a secession would depend upon recognition by the international community, etc. So that might be a way that certain provinces could. There's no legal mechanism for it, but if a de facto secession happens, it could. You have to read the decision for more detail. I still think it's extremely unlikely because it would require recognition from the international community. And I think we also have to consider how much do Canadians actually want to join the United States. I'm sure there's some people, probably some people who watch this channel, think it would be great to have the Second Amendment and to have lower taxes. But by and large, I think the average Canadian has no interest in being American. Any culture that we do have left over the last 20 years has been really heavily focused on that we're not Americans and that America is not a great place, etc. And we have to be honest with ourselves that although Pierre Poilievre seems poised to become the Prime Minister of Canada, I mean, he's just liberal light. This is a very liberal country, and I don't think they'd want to join what's perceived as a more conservative country. And from an American perspective, the Democrats would never, ever lose another election if Canada were incorporated, and especially if the entirety of Canada was one state with electoral college votes comparable to those of California, which has a similar population. It would always be Democrat because, I mean, the Conservative Party of Canada is probably in some ways to the left of the Democrat Party, although the Democrat Party under Biden, as the Liberal Party under Trudeau, did make some strong moves leftwards. But certainly the Conservative Party of Canada is a lot to the left of the Republican Party, I would say. Of course, there are different flavors of Republican within that party, but it seems to me that with the voter blocks in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, that the Democrats would be securing those presidential votes and Congress seats each and every time. So it would be very unbalancing, and from Donald Trump's perspective as a Republican, probably not a great idea. So I don't know how much the United States is interested in taking Canada on. So that leaves me with, well, are there alternate non-legal, non-constitutional amendment options? I mean, purchase, well, Canada's not for sale. It's not, Greenland could be sold by Denmark because it's owned by Denmark. Canada isn't owned by anyone. It's just Canada by virtue of the Constitution Act. So it couldn't be purchased. It could be invaded. The United States could probably defeat Canada's military in about 5 minutes. Because our military is in a woeful state and it's tiny, whereas the United States is still a military superpower. But I don't think that's realistic at all, that would ever happen. I'm not even sure if American soldiers would follow the orders or whether the generals would follow the orders to invade Canada. So I don't think that's really worth considering as a realistic perspective or possibility. So just to sum up, long story short, technically, yes, it's legally possible. Practically, I think it's pretty much impossible that this would happen. So you can that's what I'd say. End of the day, it's not happening. So Canada's going to remain Canada, and we need to work on building up our own country rather than having dreams of joining the United States, which would by no means be a cure-all in any event. So that said, this video is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, you could call a lawyer. If you want me to be that lawyer, I've got my information running on the ticker below there. You always need individualized advice for whatever legal situation you're in. So ask you to call me if you have a legal question, or call another lawyer. We're always interested in show suggestions. You can leave those in the comments box, or you can send an email to the email address listed below. And if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media.